My name is Serena Fowler, and I'm 29 years old. 3 hours before my wedding, my mother was pounding on the locked gate of the venue, screaming that I had betrayed my family. I planned the whole thing in secret. 7 months of phone calls, vendor meetings, handwritten invitations, 47 guests, a private garden, my grandfather walking me down the aisle. My parents weren't on the list. My sister wasn't on the list. And for 7 months, every single person I trusted kept their mouth shut. Then my cousin posted an Instagram story. 2 minutes. That's all it took. My mom saw it, got in her car, and drove 45 minutes in a rage. She showed up at the gate, fists slamming against iron, demanding to be let in. And what my grandfather, my mom's own father, said to her face at that gate. It's the reason she drove away in silence. And it's the reason I'm telling you this story. Before I take you back to where it all started, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly speaks to you. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back to Christmas dinner 11 months ago. The night I realized my mother would never let me have a wedding in peace. My parents divorced when I was 12. My sister Brooke was 16. My mother Diane raised us alone after that, and she never let anyone forget it. Every Thanksgiving grace, every church potluck, every parent-teacher conference, I did this by myself. No help, no safety net. And she did. I'll give her that. She kept the house. She kept us fed. She kept us in clean clothes and after-school programs. But somewhere along the way, the sacrifice became currency, and she spent it unevenly. Brooke was the return on investment. Straight A's sorority, married Tyler Langdon, a litigation attorney. At 26, in a ceremony my mother planned down to the napkin ring. Brooke did everything right, which really meant Brooke did everything Diane's way. I was the one who didn't. I chose accounting instead of law. I moved into my own apartment at 22 with money I saved from waitressing. I cut my hair short one summer, and my mother stared at me across the kitchen table like I'd set the house on fire. Every decision I made got corrected. The car I bought, too old. The apartment I rented, wrong neighborhood. The way I dressed for church. Too casual, and every correction came wrapped in the same phrase. I'm only saying this because I love you. Brooke heard different words. I'm so proud of you, Brooke. My mother said it at every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner, always in front of me, always loud enough for the whole table to hear. She never said it to me. Not once. I used to think I just hadn't earned it yet. That if I tried harder, chose better, smiled wider, I'd hear those words too. I was 25 before I stopped waiting. I met Joel Tanner at the Saturday Farmers Market 4 years ago. He had a booth near the back. Handmade bookshelves, cutting boards, small tables. His hands were rough and calloused, his smile easy, his prices fair. I asked about a shelf for my apartment. He asked what books I read. We talked for 40 minutes. Ha! I forgot to buy vegetables. Joel owns a small woodworking shop on the edge of town. Custom furniture mostly, dining tables, bed frames, cabinets. He taught himself the trade through a community college program, built his client list, word of mouth, and paid off his house by 30. He's not flashy. He drives a 10-year-old truck and wears the same 3 flannels in rotation. But he's steady. He shows up. He listens. The first time I brought him to meet my mother, she opened the door, smiled, and said, "So nice to finally meet you." Then she sat across from him at dinner and asked, "Where did you go to school, Joel?" Joel? He said he'd done a 2-year program at the community college. She didn't say another word to him for the rest of the meal. That night, she called me. 10:15 p.m. "Serena, that you can do better than that." I told her Joel was kind and hardworking and that I loved him. She said, "Love doesn't pay the mortgage, sweetheart." Joel already owned his house outright. I didn't bother telling her. For 3 years, I thought she'd come around. I brought Joel to holidays, to Sunday dinners, to Brooke's kids' birthday parties. My mother smiled through it, tolerated him the way you tolerate a stain on the couch. You're too polite to mention. But she never warmed. She never once asked him about his work, his family, his life. I was wrong about her changing. It took me 3 years to understand that my mother's problem with Joel had nothing to do with Joel. Joel proposed in his workshop on a Tuesday evening. I'd come by after work to bring him dinner, and when I walked in, there was sawdust still floating in the air, the lathe still warm, and a ring on a small wooden stand he turned from walnut. The band was walnut and silver. He'd made it himself. I said yes before he finished asking. Les? I called my mother from the truck, still shaking. 8 seconds of silence. Then I hope you know what you're doing. No congratulations. No. Let me see the ring. No joy. Brooke texted an hour later. Congrats, I guess. Have you thought about a prenup, though? Just in case. I didn't reply. Within a week, the campaign started. My mother called my Aunt Ruth, called my Uncle Davis, called cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. The message was always some version of the same thing. Serena's engaged to a carpenter. Pray for her. I know because Aunt Ruth called me the following Sunday. Honey, your mom told me about the engagement. She sounded worried. Are you okay? I was fine. Joel was fine. The only thing wrong was the woman making phone calls. Then Diane did something I didn't see coming. She called my father Greg Fowler, the man she hadn't spoken to in 8 years, the man she'd spent my entire adolescence blaming for everything. She picked up the phone and told him, "Your daughter is about to make the same mistake I did." My dad told me about the call 2 days later, his voice careful and thin. "Your mom thinks Joel is trouble, kiddo. Mom thinks everyone's trouble, Dad. He didn't argue. He didn't defend me either. That was the pattern. It was always the pattern. It was always the pattern." Christmas dinner, my mother's house, 15 people around a table too small for 15. Joel and I arrived together. He carried in a wine rack he'd built from reclaimed oak. Hand-finished, dovetailed joints, and 3 weeks of evening work. My mother unwrapped it, turned it in her hands and said, "Oh, handmade, how resourceful." Brooke covered her mouth, but the laugh slipped through. Joel set it on the counter without a word. I felt his hand tighten around mine under the table. Dinner moved the way it always did. Brooke's kids, Tyler's cases, Diane's church events. Then the conversation turned to our future. My aunt asked when we'd start thinking about a family. My mother didn't let me answer. She turned to Joel, fork still in her hand, and said, "So Joel, when Serena has children, are you going to build the crib yourself too, or can you actually afford to buy one?" The table went silent, 15 people, and not one of them breathed. Joel set his napkin beside his plate. He looked at my mother. He looked at my mother. He didn't say a word. His jaw flexed once, that was it. At the head of the table, my grandfather Walter stared at Diane for a long time. Then he shook his head, slow, deliberate, pushed his chair back, and walked out of the room. Nobody followed him. Nobody said a thing. I held Joel's hand under the table so tight my knuckles achy. We left 20 minutes later. I didn't cry until we were in the truck. Joel drove. He didn't ask me to explain. Didn't tell me it was fine. He just drove. That night at 11 p.m., my phone rang. Grandpa Walter, 7 words. I saw it. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Never again." I sat on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, and cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind that comes from years of holding it together while someone chips away at you, one comment at a time. "Grandpa, it's fine. H, she's always like, it's not fine." His voice was low, steady, the same voice he used to settle a classroom of 30 teenagers. I sat there tonight and watched my daughter humiliate a good man at my table. I should have opened my mouth. I didn't. That won't happen again. That won't happen again. I couldn't speak for a moment because this was new. In 29 years, no one in my family had ever said those words to me. That what happened was real. That it wasn't in my head. That I wasn't being too sensitive. "Your grandmother," he said and paused. "God rest her. She would have told Diane off years ago. Margaret didn't tolerate cruelty dressed up as concern. I should have done the same. I waited too long. My grandmother Margaret passed 6 years ago. She was the kind of woman who said exactly one sentence when she was angry, and that sentence landed like a verdict. I always wondered what she'd think of all this. Now I knew. Grandpa, I don't want to put you in the middle. You're not putting me anywhere. I'm choosing where I stand. He didn't tell me what to do. Didn't offer advice about the wedding or about Diane. He just said one more thing before he hung up. "Whatever you decide about your wedding, I'll be there front row." I set the phone on the nightstand. Joel was already asleep beside me. I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift. Not a decision yet, but the ground under a decision. The first solid ground I'd felt in years. January, I decided to try one more time. I called my mother and invited her to come dress shopping with me. "Just the 2 of us, Mom. No pressure." I found a little bridal boutique in Ridgewood. She agreed. And I let myself feel hopeful for exactly 48 hours. We met on a Saturday morning. I'd already picked out 3 dresses to try. Simple, elegant teal'jan, the kind of dress I'd always wanted. I stepped out of the fitting room in my favorite, a crepe dress with a lace hem that hit just below the knee. My mother looked at me for 5 seconds. That looks like a sundress, Serena, not a wedding gown. I didn't respond. She checked her phone, gathered her purse, and left 20 minutes after arriving. Didn't say goodbye to the consultant, didn't say goodbye to me. 1 week later, the phone call. If you marry Joel, I will stand up during the ceremony and object. I will not sit there and pretend this is okay. Mom, objections aren't legally. I don't care about legal. I care about everyone seeing that at least one person in this family has the courage to speak the truth. The courage. She actually used that word. I called Brooke hoping for something, anything. She answered on the second ring. Mom's serious, Serena. She already called the church office. Maybe just postpone until things cool down. Things weren't going to cool down. Things weren't going to cool down. I'd spent 29 years waiting for them to cool down. That phone call was January 14th. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, opened a new folder, and typed 2 words, Plan B. That folder stayed open for 7 months. I spent a week staring at that folder before I typed anything into it, because I needed to be honest with myself about what was at stake. Not just the wedding, but everything after. If I gave in, if my mother would own every milestone from here forward, the baby shower, the nursery color, the name of my first child. If she could veto my husband, she could veto anything. If I fought her publicly, I'd be the villain, the ungrateful daughter, the one who tore the family apart. Those were already Brooke's words in a group text I didn't ask to be added to. And if I did nothing, if I just planned a regular wedding and hoped for the best, my mother would do exactly what she promised. She'd stand up in front of everyone I love and call my marriage a mistake. She'd done it before. At our engagement party the previous spring, she'd knocked over a glass of wine at the dessert table and started crying in front of 30 guests about how she was losing her daughter. Joel's parents left early. My aunt drove Diane home. That wasn't a one-time performance. Very one-time performance. That was a dress rehearsal. Joel never once said, choose me or your family. But I could see it in the lines around his eyes. The way he slept lighter now. The way he'd go quiet for long stretches in the workshop. He was tired, not of me, of the siege. One night, he set down his chisel and looked at me across the workbench. I'm not going anywhere, but I need you to decide what kind of life you want. One where your mother has veto power, or one where she doesn't. I didn't answer him that night, but I opened the folder the next morning and started typing. The plan took shape in pieces. A venue first, a private garden estate called Whitfield House. 45 minutes east, iron gate, stone walls, hedgerows thick enough to muffle sound. I booked it for October 11th under my name and Joel's, and the deposit came from our savings, every cent. Next, Pastor Elaine Webb. She'd known me since I joined the congregation at 23. She knew about Diane. When I called and explained, there was a long pause on the line. Serena, are you sure about this? Pastor Elaine, my mother promised to object at the altar. She's already rehearsed it. Another pause. What time do you need me there? 47 guests. I built the list at the kitchen table with Joel, name by name, trust by trust. Friends from work, my college roommate, Joel's family, his parents, his brother, 2 aunts, a handful of cousins on my side, but only the ones who'd never report back to Diane. Aunt Ruth made the list. Uncle Davis didn't. My cousin Megan did because she was 26, loyal, and closer to me than to my mother. Every invitation went out by hand. No email, no registry website, no digital trail. Inside each envelope, one line in red ink. This is a private celebration. Please do not share on social media until after the ceremony. Yee. 47 people. Every one of them agreed. The last call I made was to my grandfather. Grandpa, would you walk me down the aisle? 3 seconds of silence. I heard him exhale. I've been waiting for you to ask. Joel and I covered everything ourselves. $8,000. Garden venue, catering, photographer, flowers. Joel built the arbor from reclaimed wood in his shop. I bought my dress alone, the twinkled one, the sundress. For 7 months, 47 people kept a secret. And then my cousin Megan posted an Instagram story. February, when I went back to that bridal boutique in Ridgewood alone this time, tried on the length crepe dress again. looked at myself in the three-way mirror, and didn't hear my mother's voice. Bought it on the spot. Bought it on the spot. The consultant hugged me at the register. April Joel started on the arbor. I drove out to his shop after work and found him sanding a crossbeam by hand, sawdust in his hair, a pencil behind his ear. The frame was 8 feet tall, built from barnwood he'd salvaged from a demolition site. That night, I watched him carve our wedding date into the base. Small letters tucked into the grain where you'd only see them if you knew to look. I stood in the doorway of the shop and cried. He didn't ask why. He already knew. He made the invitations went out. Andress envelopes, each one sealed with a thumbprint of wax. Inside date, time, address, dress code, in the line in red ink. No RSVP card. I called each person individually. Are you in? Can you keep this quiet? 47 yesies. June, my mother called. Have you come to your senses? About Joel? Whizzed. I kept my voice even. We're taking our time, Mom. Good. That's the smartest thing you've said in years. I hung up and looked at the seating chart spread across my kitchen table. 47 names in neat columns, table assignments, dietary notes, a highlighted square for Grandpa Walter, front row aisle seat. My mother thought I'd surrendered. She thought the silence meant she'd won. I let her think that. For the first time in my life, I told my mother exactly what she wanted to hear, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no shame, just the clean, quiet hum of a decision already made. July Desbrook showed up at my apartment unannounced, the first time she'd visited in over 2 years. She stood in the doorway with a bottle of wine and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just thought I'd stop by. We never hang out anymore. I let her in, made small talk, poured the wine. She moved through my apartment like a detective, glanced at the counter, the bookshelf, the fridge, paused by the bathroom, and tilted her head. Are you dieting? You look thinner. Just eating healthier? H. She sipped her wine. You look different, lighter. How? I don't know. Like something changed. My planning notebook sat on the coffee table. Plain white cover, no label. I reached for a magazine and set it on top. Casual, natural. Brooke watched me do it. She settled onto the couch and crossed her legs. Yeah, you know Mom's been telling everyone you called off the engagement, right? She told the whole women's group at church. I poured more wine, took my time. That's Mom's story to tell, not mine. So, you haven't called it off? I didn't say that either. She narrowed her eyes. I could see it. The gears turning, the suspicion building. Brooke wasn't stupid. She'd spent 33 years reading people's faces for Diane, delivering intel, earning her spot as the favorite. She knew something was off, but she didn't have enough. She said, setting her glass down, I'm glad you're doing okay. Mom worries, you know. I know she does. Brooke left that evening looking confused. She hugged me at the door, brief, perfunctor, and walked to her car. I watched from the window until her tail lights disappeared. Then I pulled the notebook out from under the magazine and opened it to the seating chart. August. The phone call came from Aunt Ruth on a Sunday afternoon. Sweetheart, I need to ask you something. Your mom stood up at the women's group brunch yesterday and told everyone you'd come to your senses. She said you ended things with Joel and you're, how did she put it, healing and finding your way back. I closed my eyes. Aunt Ruth, I'm fine. Mom says what she needs to say. So, it's not true. I appreciate you checking on me. She paused. Okay, honey, just know I'm here. I didn't confirm. I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. Damaza, I let Diane's version of the story float unchallenged because every week she believed she'd won was another week. She wasn't looking for what I was actually doing. The victory lap came fast as my mother organized a small gathering. 6 women from church, a cake, and a toast to Serena for making the right choice. Brooke posted a photo on Facebook, the group smiling around Diane's kitchen island, champagne flutes raised. The caption read, so proud of my little sister for making the right choice. I saw the photo at 9:47 p.m. while sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, highlighter in hand, circling the final version of my seating chart. 47 names, table numbers, meal preferences, a note about Grandpa Walter's dietary restriction, no shellfish, easy, on the salt. My mother threw a party to celebrate my surrender. I was color-coding place cards. The distance between her reality and mine had never been wider. And for the first time, that distance didn't hurt. It just was like weather, like gravity, like the simple measurable fact that in 53 days, I would marry Joel Tanner in a garden she didn't know existed. The last week was the quietest of my life. Monday, final walkthrough at Whitfield House. The garden was perfect. White chairs and 2 rows of 12, a stone path down the center, the arbor spot marked with tape where Joel would install it the morning of, wisteria climbing the back wall. 100 string lights waiting to be hung. Tuesday, Joel finished the arbor. I went to the shop to see it. 8 feet tall, sanded smooth, the grain of the reclaimed wood, catching light like water. Day carved into the base. He'd added one thing I hadn't seen. A small heart no bigger than a thumbprint hidden on the underside of the crossbeam for us. He said, nobody else has to see it. Nobody else has to see it. Wednesday through Friday, I called every guest. No social media until after the ceremony, please. 47 confirmations. Saturday night, the night before, Joel lay beside me, already asleep, one arm across my waist. I stared at the ceiling and listened to him breathe. Tomorrow, I would marry this man, without permission, without apology, without my mother's hand anywhere near it. My heart was pounding, not from fear, from something I didn't have a name for yet. Maybe freedom sounds like a heartbeat when you're not used to it. Sunday morning, I woke at 5:30, slipped on a jacket, and drove to the venue alone, checked the flowers, straightened chairs, stood under the arbor in the early light, and closed my eyes. Everything was ready. At 10:47 a.m., my phone buzzed, "Megan, Serena, I'm so sorry. I posted a story by accident. A story by accident. The chairs, the garden, it was so beautiful. I didn't think I deleted it after 2 minutes. But your mom, she already saw it. 2 minutes, 7 months, and my mother already had a screenshot. I'm standing in that garden, phone in my hand, and my stomach just drops. 2 minutes, that's all it took. One Instagram story, 2 minutes, and 7 months of planning hanging by a thread. If you've ever had that moment where everything you built could fall apart because of one small thing, you know exactly what I feel right now. Tell me in the comments what you would have done. 2. Would you have panicked, changed the locks? And if this story is hitting close to home, hit subscribe because what happens next is something I still can't believe. I called Joel first. My voice didn't shake as I didn't have time for shaking. My mom knows. He was at the shop loading the arbor into his truck. I heard him set something down. How long do we have? 45 minutes. If she leaves right now, what do you need? Call the venue manager. Make sure the front gate is locked. And tell Pastor Elaine we're moving the ceremony up 30 minutes. Done. What else? Friday. Get here. He hung up. No panic, no questions, just movement. I dialed Pastor Elaine next. She answered on the first ring. She'd been expecting my call, already at the venue in her robes. Serena, what's happening? My mother found out. She's probably already in the car. A brief silence. How far away is she? 45 minutes. Then we have 45 minutes. I'll be ready whenever you are. The last call was to Grandpa Walter, and he picked up immediately like he'd been holding the phone. Grandpa Mom found out. She saw an Instagram post. She's coming. 2 seconds of silence. I could hear him breathing slow, measured, the same deliberate calm he brought to 34 years of teaching teenagers who didn't want to sit still. I'll handle it. Grandpa Serena, you get dressed, you put on that dress, and you walk out to that garden. I'll handle your mother. I stood there in the early light, surrounded by white chairs and string lights and 47 place cards I'd written by hand. And I believed him. I believed him the way you believe a wall will hold. The way you believe the floor will be there when you step. Okay, Grandpa. Okay, now go. I hung up, slipped the phone into my pocket, walked toward the bridal room. My hands were steady. The bridal room was a small cottage at the back of the garden. Stone floor, white curtains, a full-length mirror leaning against the wall. My best friend Claire was already there, steaming the hem of a dress she didn't know existed until 6 months ago. How are we doing? She asked without looking up. My mother's on her way. The steamer paused. Claire looked at me. Do you want to move things up? Already done. 30 minutes early. 30 minutes early. Joel's handling it. She nodded once and held out the dress. I stepped into it. To length crepe fabric, the lace hem my mother had called a sundress. Claire zipped the back and smoothed the shoulders. I turned to face the mirror. I looked like me, not a version of me someone else approved. Just me. In a dress I chose, in a venue I booked. And on a morning I'd planned down to the last flower arrangement. A knock at the door. Grandpa Walter stepped in. Gray suit, white shirt, a small sprig of lavender pinned to his lapel. His shoes were polished. His back was straight. He looked 10 years younger than 78. He stopped in the doorway and stared at me. His eyes went red at the rims and his jaw worked once before he spoke. "You look just like your grandmother." I crossed the room and took his hand. His fingers were warm, thin, steady. He squeezed once, thin, steady. He squeezed once. "She would have loved this," he said quietly. "She would have loved Joel. I know." He pulled a folded handkerchief from his breast pocket, pressed it briefly to his eyes, and tucked it back. Then he offered me his arm. "Ready?" Through the window, I could see the garden. 47 people in their chairs. A Joel standing beneath the arbor he'd built. String lights not yet lit, waiting for evening. "Ready?" I found out later what happened in my mother's kitchen that morning. Diane was sitting at the island. Coffee, phone, Sunday quiet. She was scrolling Instagram the way she always does, methodically checking every story from every family member, every church acquaintance, every former neighbor. Control requires surveillance, and my mother never missed a post. Megan's story appeared at 10:44 a.m. 3 seconds of video. White chairs and curved rows, a stone path, a garden lit by early sun, a caption, "Such a beautiful morning." Megan deleted at 10:46, but my mother had already taken a screenshot. She screenshots everything. My phone records show that Diane called Brooke at 10:49. "Your sister is getting married today, but right now without us." Brooke, from what I've been told, said that's impossible. She canceled everything. I have a screenshot. Garden venue, white chairs. "It's happening. Mom, get in the car, Brooke." Now they drove together. Diane behind the wheel, 45 minutes on the interstate, then a county road, then the gravel lane leading to Whitfield House. Brooke told me later, weeks later, in a text she probably shouldn't have sent, that Diane ran 3 red lights on the way. That she gripped the steering wheel with both hands and didn't say a single word the entire drive. That her face was a color Brooke had never seen. Inside the garden, none of us knew any of this yet. The chairs were full. Joel stood beneath the arbor, hands folded, eyes on the cottage door. "Kepster?" Grandpa Walter had my arm and the string quartet. 4 of Joel's friends from the community orchestra began to play. Pastor Elaine stepped to the microphone and said, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. My mother was 17 minutes away." The garden doors opened and Grandpa Walter and I stepped onto the stone path. 47 faces turned toward us. Some were smiling. Some were already crying. Joel's mother had her hand over her mouth. My friend Claire, standing to the left as my maid of honor, wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. Walter walked slowly, not because of his knee, though it did ache, because he meant every step. His arm was locked with mine, his chin level, his pace deliberate. He'd spent a lifetime walking into classrooms, commanding rooms without raising his voice. His arm was low. He brought that same gravity to a garden path lined with wild flowers. Joel stood beneath the arbor. His suit was navy. His shoes were borrowed. His eyes were wet before I reached him. Walter placed my hand into Joel's, held it there for a moment, and looked at Joel the way he'd never looked at him before, directly, firmly, with something that resembled a transfer of trust. Joel nodded once. "Thank you, sir." Walter squeezed both our hands, then released them and stepped to his seat in the front row. Pastor Elaine smiled. "Who gives this woman to be married?" Walter stood from his seat, one hand on the armrest. "Her grandfather does proudly." A ripple of soft laughter, a few tissues. Joel took my hands. "Well, begin with the groom's vows," Elaine said. Joel's voice was steady and low. He didn't read from a card. I don't have a lot of fancy words. I'm better with my hands, but I promise you this. I will show up every single day. I will build the life you deserve, and I'll never ask you to be anyone other than who you are." Then behind us, beyond the garden wall, the slam of a car door. Then another. Then the sound of heels on gravel moving fast. The iron gate shook before her voice arrived. 3 hard strikes, metal on metal. Then Serena, open this gate. 47 heads turned. The string quartet stopped mid-bow. A child in the 3rd row grabbed her mother's arm. My mother's voice came through the stone and iron like it always did. Sharp, certain, louder than anything else in the room. She'd spent my entire life being the loudest person in every space she entered. "You are getting married without your own mother. Do you know how that makes me look?" Through the iron bars, I could see her. Navy blouse, white knuckles on the gate, mascara already starting to run. Behind her, Brooke stood on the gravel drive, arms crossed, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. Joel's hand found my shoulder, warm, steady. He didn't speak. I felt my feet start to move toward the gate, toward her voice. toward 29 years of conditioning that said, when your mother calls, you go. My whole body leaned into it just for a second. Then a hand touched my other shoulder. Gentle, familiar. I turned. Familiar. I turned. Grandpa Walter was standing behind me. He'd risen from his seat without a sound. His face was calm. His eyes were clear. Sit down, sweetheart, he said. This one's mine. He straightened his lapel, adjusted the lavender sprig, and walked slowly by deliberately, each step landing like a sentence toward the iron gate. 47 people watched him go. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. The only sound was his shoes on the stone path, and beyond the wall, my mother's breathing, Lipta's breathing. He reached the gate and stood on the inside 2 feet from his daughter. Diane stared at him. Her hands dropped from the bars. Dad, you knew about this. Walter didn't blink. I didn't just know, Diane. I walked her down the aisle because you made yourself unworthy of doing. My mother's mouth opened. Nothing came out for 3 full seconds. Then, how dare you? Walter raised one hand. Not fast, not angry, just enough. The same gesture that had silenced 30 years of 10th graders. I'm not finished. Diane closed her mouth. I spent 34 years teaching children to treat people with basic decency. I raised you the same way. Your mother raised you the same way. But somewhere along the line, you became the exact kind of parent I spent my life trying not to be. His voice never rose. Say. Every word carried weight because he'd used so few of them in 78 years. You belittle. You control. You punish your daughter for choosing a good man who works with his hands, just like her father did, just like I did before I taught. You told her his ring wasn't good enough. Oh, man. You told everyone in our family that she was making a mistake. You promised to stand up at her wedding and humiliate her. You left me no choice. Diane's face crumpled. Tears, real ones, the kind she couldn't weaponize, slid down her cheeks. Dad, I was trying to protect her. I was trying to protect her. No, but you were trying to control her. There's a difference. And until you learn it, she's right to keep her distance. He paused. Let the silence settle. 47 people held their breath on the other side of the wall. Full. Today, I walked your daughter down the aisle because her own parents made themselves unworthy of the honor. That is not her shame, Diane. It's yours. He looked at her for one more moment. Then he turned slowly and walked back toward the garden. He didn't look back. Diane stood at the gate for 10 seconds, maybe longer. Time does strange things when the world goes quiet. Her hands hung at her sides. The mascara had drawn 2 dark lines from her eyes to her jaw. She didn't wipe them. She didn't scream. She didn't bang on the gate again. Behind her, Brooke stepped forward and touched her arm. Mom, let's go. People are watching. My mother looked through the gate one last time, through the iron bars across the garden, past the rows of white chairs, and found me standing beside Joel in a to-length dress she'd called a sundress, under an arbor built by a man she'd called worthless, surrounded by 47 people who'd chosen to be here. She held my eyes for a moment. I held hers, then she turned, Brooke's hand on her elbow, and walked back to the car. The doors closed. The engine started. Gravel crunched beneath tires, and then it was quiet. The kind of quiet that follows something irreversible. Walter walked back up the path. His face was composed, but I could see his hand trembling slightly at his side. 78 years old. And he just told his only daughter that she failed as a parent. That costs something even when it's true. Fud. He passed my chair, leaned down and said, Now, where were we? A laugh broke through the silence. Nervous, relieved, grateful. Then another. Then applause. Not the big kind, just the soft, slow kind that means we see you. Pastor Elaine stepped back to the microphone, her eyes glistening. She took a breath and smiled. I believe we were at the vows. Joel took my hands again. His palms were warm. His grip was sure. And I read in my vows as if the world had started over. I didn't read from a card either. I'd written my vows in the notebook, the one I'd hidden under a magazine when Brooke came snooping. But by October, I knew them by heart. Joel, I spent most of my life waiting for someone to tell me I was doing it right. Waiting for permission, waiting to be enough. You never made me wait. But you never asked me to choose between you and the people who were supposed to love me. You just loved me and you waited. His eyes were red. He blinked hard and smiled. You built me a bookshelf on our second date. You built an altar for our wedding with your own hands. And you carved our date into the bottom where nobody would see it because that's who you are. You put love into the parts nobody checks. A murmur through the crowd. Joel's mother pressed both hands to her face. I don't need someone to fix my life. I need someone to stand next to me while I fix it myself. That's you. That's always been you. Pastor Elaine's voice was thick when she spoke. By the power vested in me by the state and by this community of witnesses, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Joel kissed me, and the garden erupted. It is 47 people on their feet. Claire ugly crying into a bouquet. Joel's dad clapping with his hands above his head. My cousin Megan mascara destroyed, mouthing, I'm so sorry and I love you simultaneously. And in the front row, Grandpa Walter sitting straight back, hands folded on his lap, a white handkerchief pressed to his eyes, not clapping, just watching. The way you watch something you helped build finally stand on its own. I was married on my terms, in my dress, in my garden. Nobody took it from me. The reception unfolded right there in the garden, long tables draped in white linen, string lights switched on as the afternoon light softened. A caterer from town, a woman Joel had built a kitchen island for, served roast chicken, herb-ed potatoes, and a 3-tier cake with buttercream that tasted like someone's grandmother had made it because she had Joel's mother baked it. 3 tiers. At 70, Joel and I opened with a first dance. No choreography, no grand entrance, just the two of us swaying under the lights to a folk song about coming home. His hand on the small of my back, my forehead against his jaw, 47 people pretending not to watch. Aunt Ruth found Joel at the bar table during dinner. She took his hand in both of hers and held it. I'm sorry it took me this long to meet you properly. Welcome to the family. Joel looked at her for a moment, then said, Thank you, ma'am. That means more than you know. Ruth nodded, squeezed his hand, and walked away, wiping her eyes. Nobody mentioned the scene at the gate directly. They didn't need to. Yeah, it was in the room the way weather is in a room after a storm. Present felt impossible to ignore. Megan found me near the cake table, her eyes still swollen. Serena, I'm so sorry. So I pulled her into a hug before she could finish. You didn't ruin anything. She was never going to take this from me. Megan buried her face in my shoulder and cried. I held her and meant it. She was 26 and impulsive, and she'd made a mistake that lasted 2 minutes. My mother had been making hers for 29 years. There was no comparison. After dinner, as the string lights warmed to amber in the garden filled with cricket song, Grandpa Walter stood. He didn't clink his glass. He didn't clear his throat. He just stood. And somehow the entire garden went silent within 4 seconds. At 34 years of commanding classrooms without raising his voice, the skill doesn't retire when you do. He held his glass at chest height. His hand was steady now. I taught history for 34 years. If there's one thing history teaches, it's that the people who are right don't always get to be loud. Sometimes they get written over. Sometimes they get shouted down. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is plan quietly and show. He looked at me. Serena, your grandmother would have loved today. She would have loved this garden. She would have loved Joel. And she would have told you what I'm telling you now. You did the right thing. You did the hard thing and the right thing, and they were the same thing. That doesn't happen as often as people pretend. He turned to Joel. Take care of her, and not because she can't take care of herself. She can. Lord knows she's proved that. Take care of her because she deserves someone who wants to. Someone who wants things instead of tearing them down. Joel's jaw tightened. He nodded once. Walter raised his glass. To Serena and Joel, may your house be as solid as the man who built its furniture. 47 glasses rose. 47 voices. To Serena and Joel. I pressed my face into Joel's shoulder and let myself cry. Not the kind I'd cried at Christmas or in a truck after dinner or alone at my kitchen table. This was the other kind. The kind that comes when something you broke yourself building finally works. The guests drifted home as the night cooled. Hugs at the gate. Promises to send photos. Ska. Joel's mother held my face in both hands and said, If you're my daughter now too. His father shook my hand, then changed his mind and hugged me. By 10, 0, the garden was almost empty. The string lights still glowed. The caterer packed up quietly. Somewhere beyond the hedge, an owl. Joel and I sat side by side on the wooden bench near the arbor. My shoes were off. His tie was loosened. The remains of the cake sat on the table behind us. You okay? He asked. I'm married, he grinned. Yeah, you are. And my mother showed up, and your grandfather sent her home. I leaned my head against his shoulder. He smelled like cedar and buttercream frosting and the faintest trace of sawdust. I closed my eyes and felt my whole body soften. For the first time in 7 months, maybe longer, the plan was finished. The wedding was done, and it was beautiful. And it was beautiful. Walter was the last to leave. He walked slowly across the garden, stopped in front of us, and took my hand. "You call me tomorrow." "I will, Grandpa." He leaned down and kissed my forehead, held it there for a beat. Then he straightened, adjusted his lapel, and walked to his car with the careful, unhurried stride of a man who had done the hardest thing he'd ever had to do and would do it again without hesitation. I watched his taillights disappear down the gravel road. Joel put his arm around me. The string lights hummed. The arbor stood solid above us, the carved date hidden beneath. The little heart nobody else would ever see. The wedding was over, but the fallout was just beginning. Sunday morning, our first day as married people. Joel made coffee while I sat at the kitchen table in his old flannel shirt. My phone face down beside me. It had been buzzing since dawn. Brooke, Greg, 3 cousins, 2 numbers I didn't recognize, a voicemail from a woman at church whose name I'd never learned. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I opened my laptop and wrote one email. I addressed it to 3 people: my mother, my sister, and my father. I spent 40 minutes on it. Joel read it before I sent it. He nodded once and said, "That's fair. That's more than fair. This is what I wrote, more or less. I love you, all 3 of you. That has never been the question. The question has always been whether love and respect could coexist in this family. And for the last 4 years, the answer has been no. I gave chances. I invited Mom to dress shopping. I proposed compromises. And I asked for one condition: respect Joel, and was told that was asking too much. I was told my own mother would stand up at my wedding and object to my marriage, so I planned a wedding where that couldn't happen. This was not revenge. This was a boundary. If you want to have a relationship with me and Joel going forward, I'm open to that. But it will be built on respect, not control, not conditions, not commentary on my husband's career, education, or worth. The door is open, but I'm the one holding the handle now. I hit send at 8:14 a.m., then I closed the laptop, picked up my coffee, and sat with my husband at the table by the window where the morning light came in clean and warm. The phone kept buzzing. I left it face down. Brooke responded in 20 minutes. Yet, the message was exactly what I expected. The same script she'd been reading from since we were teenagers. "You humiliated Mom in front of Grandpa, in front of everyone. I can't believe you're playing the victim here. I read it once, closed it, didn't reply." My father called that afternoon. His voice was the careful, measured tone of a man who'd spent 17 years avoiding conflict. "Honey, I think you went a little far with all this. Dad, where were you when Mom called Joel a failure at Christmas dinner? Silence. Where were you when she told the entire family I was settling? When she told everyone at church I'd come to my senses. More silence, the long, familiar kind. I love you, Dad, but I'm done waiting for you to show up," he said. I understand in a voice that meant he didn't. We hung up. Aunt Ruth called Diane. I heard about it secondhand from a cousin who overheard. My father chose Serena over me. Diane had said, voice raw. My own father. Ruth's response was quiet but clear. He didn't choose anyone. Diane, he chose what was right. There's a difference. The ripple started small and spread fast. I was trying to protect her. Joel, he reminds me of Greg. The hands, the trade, the I know what he reminds you of. Silence. Greg left, Dad. He walked out when she was 12. I just didn't want to know Diane, but Joel isn't Greg, and controlling your daughter isn't the same as protecting her. You know the difference. You've always known it. More silence. Walter said he could hear her breathing change. The way it shifts when someone stops performing and starts actually sitting with the thing they've been running from. I just wanted to protect her. She said again, quieter. No, you wanted to control her because losing control is what scares you, and I understand that, but understanding it doesn't make it right, she cried. Walter said it wasn't the kind of crying she did at the Christmas table or the engagement party, the kind designed to pull focus, to redirect the conversation toward her pain. This was different. This was the sound of a narrative cracking, the story she told herself for years. For years. I'm the good mother I know best. They'll thank me later. Breaking under the weight of her own father's words. And I don't know if my mother will ever fully change. But for the first time, she was quiet enough to hear something other than her own voice. I want to pause here and ask you something real. to something real. Circulate. Have you ever had to write that kind of message? The one where you draw a clear line, no yelling, no insults, just the truth. Where you tell someone, I love you, but this is where my door closes. If you have, I see you. If you haven't, but you need to, maybe this story is your sign. Drop a comment and tell me what boundary you've been afraid to set. And if you're still here at this point, you're one of the loyal ones. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. The consequences arrived on a schedule my mother couldn't control, which was exactly what made them unbearable for her. Week 1, whispers at church, and 2 women from the planning committee asked Diane for her side of the story after coffee hour. She gave them the version she'd rehearsed. Serena was manipulated. Joel isolated her. The whole thing was a betrayal. But 47 witnesses had a different story, and several of them attended the same church. Week 2, Diane stepped down from the events committee. She said it was to focus on family. The committee chair told Aunt Ruth privately that Diane hadn't been asked to resign, but nobody tried to talk her out of it either. 15 years of organizing bake sales, holiday pageants, fundraiser dinners, gone in 2 Sundays. Week 3, Brooke's turn. A colleague at Brooke's school, a woman named Pam, who'd been one of the 47, mentioned it over lunch in the break room. I heard about the wedding. It sounded intense. Brooke said, I don't want to talk about it. Pam didn't push. She didn't have to. The fact that she knew was enough. Brooke had spent 33 years operating in Diane's shadow, curating the story, managing the optics, playing the beautiful daughter who did everything right. For the first time, the story had slipped out of her hands. She couldn't edit it. She couldn't caption it. She couldn't add a heart emoji and call it love. My mother had built her identity on being the woman who held everything together, the sacrificer, the one who knew best. Now the town had a different version of her. The woman who showed up to her daughter's wedding uninvited and got turned away by her own father. That's the thing about reputation built on control. When the control breaks, there's nothing underneath to hold it up. As Joel hung the wedding photo in the living room on a Tuesday evening, the one of me and Grandpa Walter walking down the stone path, my hand on his arm, the arbor visible behind us. He centered it above the bookshelf, the same bookshelf he'd built from the same wood, the one that started everything at that farmer's market 4 years ago. That's the spot, I said. That's the spot. Life after the wedding was quiet in a way I hadn't experienced before. Not empty quiet, full quiet, the kind where you realize how much noise you've been living inside. I went to work. Joel ran his shop. We ate dinner at the table he'd built. We watched movies on Friday nights. On Friday night. Normal things, small things, things that felt enormous because nobody was interrupting them. One evening, Joel looked up from his book and said, You haven't checked your phone in 2 hours. I blinked. He was right. It was sitting on the kitchen counter face down, and I hadn't reached for it once. You like saints. I know, I said. It's nice. He smiled and went back to his book. Every Sunday I called Grandpa Walter. We talked about the weather, about his garden, about the history documentary he was watching. He never brought up Diane unless I did. He never asked if I regretted anything. He just showed up on the other end of the line the way he'd shown up at the gate. Steady, certain mind. Some weeks the calls lasted 10 minutes. Some weeks an hour. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. What mattered was the rhythm, the reliable, uncomplicated fact of someone who chose to be in my life without conditions. I'd never had that from family before. It changes you when you finally get it. It changes everything. 2 months after the wedding, Brooke texted, and the tone was familiar. The warm, concerned older sister voice she used when she wanted something. Hey, Thanksgiving is coming up. Mom would really love it if you came. She's been different. I read the message twice. Typed back different. How quieter. She doesn't talk about it. She just sits with it. Quieter isn't the same as sorry, Brooke. 3 dots appeared and disappeared. Appeared again. You can't hold a grudge forever, Serena. I set the phone down and looked at the wedding photo above the bookshelf. Walter's arm in mine, the garden behind us. The life I'd built in 7 months of silence and 7 years of waiting. I picked the phone back up. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm holding a boundary. Yeah, there's a difference. That's such a therapy line. It's a true line. Silence then. So you're not coming to Thanksgiving? So, if Mom wants to talk, she can meet me at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. No holiday, no audience, no pressure. That's so cold, Serena. That's so healthy, Brooke. She didn't respond after that. I put the phone down and made dinner. Joel didn't ask what the text said. He could read my face the way he reads, would grain by looking closely and trusting what he sees. That night, lying in bed, I thought about Brooke's word. Cold. She'd called me cold for asking to meet my mother on terms that didn't involve an audience and a turkey. The old me would have caved. Would have shown up at Thanksgiving with a pie and a smile and pretended nothing had happened. That because keeping peace was my job and rocking the boat was selfish. The old me would have been wrong. 3 months after the wedding, my phone rang. Not a text from Brooke serving as messenger. Not a forwarded voicemail. My mother's name on my screen calling me directly. I let it ring 3 times, then I picked up. Serena. Her voice was thin. Can we meet? Just us. Where? Wherever you want. I named the coffee shop on Elm Street, a small place with big windows close to the door. Neutral ground. Public enough to keep things civil, private enough to be honest. Saturday morning. I arrived 10 minutes early and took a seat near the exit. I didn't plan it that way consciously, but when I sat down and noticed the door within arm's reach, I knew some habits run deeper than intention. Deck. Had an intention of Diane walked in at 10 sharp and she looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. She was still the same woman who filled every room she entered, but something behind her eyes had contracted. She sat across from me, ordered a coffee, wrapped both hands around the mug, and didn't drink. Your grandfather was right. I don't know how to fix what I did, but I want to try. Trying means respecting Joel, not tolerating him. Respecting him. No more comments about his job, his education, or his worth. Can you do that? She was quiet for a long time, long enough for the barista to make someone's latte and call the name. I can try. Trying is a start. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. That we sat there and drank our coffee and talked about nothing important. The weather, the new bakery on 4th Street, Walter's garden. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a door cracked open 1 inch. That's all it needed to be. It's been 4 months since my wedding. My mother and I are not close. We may never be, and I've made peace with that, but we're talking on my terms in coffee shops on neutral ground with the door always within reach. Joel expanded the workshop last month, hired an apprentice, a 20-year-old kid from the community college program, the same one Joel went through. Business is good. He built a dining table for the mayor's office. He came home with sawdust in his hair and a grin that said he still couldn't believe someone would pay him to do what he loves. I'm studying for my CPA exam. A senior accountant is the goal. I study at the kitchen table while Joel reads beside me, and most nights the only sound is pages turning and pencil scratching. It's the most peaceful room I've ever been in. Brooke hasn't apologized. She stopped sending the passive texts, which is its own kind of progress. I don't need her to say the words. I just need her to stop. My father sent a card last month. It arrived 3 months after the wedding in a plain white envelope with his careful handwriting on the front. Inside, 4 words. I should have been there. I put it on the bookshelf Joel built right next to the wedding photo. It's not enough, but it's something. And something from my father after 17 years of nothing is more than I expected. Grandpa Walter calls every Sunday at 9. He's healthy. He's sharp. He's sharp. Though he started watching a documentary series about the Civil War and has opinions I don't fully follow, but enjoy hearing. He never asks if I regret any of it. He already knows the answer. I didn't plan my wedding in secret because I wanted revenge. I want to be clear about that. Now, I did it because I deserve one single day where no one told me I was making a mistake. Where no one stood up and objected. Where no one cried for attention at the dessert table or called my husband a failure over dinner. I deserve to walk down an aisle and feel joy instead of dread. That shouldn't be radical, but for some of us it is. Setting a boundary doesn't mean you stop loving someone. It means you start loving yourself enough to say, not today, not at my wedding, not in my life, not anymore. And I think about what Grandpa Walter said in his toast sometimes, that the bravest thing you can do is plan quietly and show up. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About all the people who live their lives in the margins of someone else's noise, who shrink themselves to keep the peace, who give up their own weddings, their own celebrations, their own milestones, because one person in the room can't let the spotlight land on anyone else. You don't have to keep shrinking. My grandfather taught me that at the gate. He showed me that the people who are supposed to protect you don't always, but the ones who truly see you, they show up. Even at 78 with a bad knee and a new suit, Joel built me an arbor out of reclaimed wood. It still stands in our backyard. We drink coffee under it on Saturday mornings, and the carved date is hidden underneath, and the little heart nobody else would see is still there, right where he put it. He put it? Some things are just for us. This morning, I sat at the kitchen table. Joel was at the counter making coffee the same way he makes it every morning, slow and patient the way he does everything. Through the window, early light came in warm and golden. On the wall, the wedding photo, me and Walter, arm in arm, walking the stone path between rows of white chairs. I look at that photo every day. Some days I see myself in the dress my mother hated. Some days I see Walter's straight back and steady arm. Newer.